All right, hello everybody. The RoundTable is on. It's March 5th, not to be confused with May 5th or Cinco de Mayo. But it is Ash Wednesday because yesterday was Mardi Gras. So I hope you're all having a good time and relaxing and enjoying the week. We are living in interesting times. Last night was the State of the Union. That was very interesting indeed, very powerful in many ways for any angle you want to look at. And John Butler is somehow missing. I don't know why, but I think he got caught up in traffic. So anyway, he may show up at some point. So we don't have an intro for music. So I was gonna basically jump into talking to Llewellyn and get his thoughts about how are things going and what's going on. And Llewellyn, it's been busy. So Llewellyn, how are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you. I have been very busy, but we're all very busy as the government does different strange and unpredictable things, or seem to me to be strange and unpredictable. I just learned that we have postponed the tax on cars for a month. Nobody knows quite. I ran a press briefing this morning for the United States Energy Association to try to peer into the energy and more specifically into the environmental policy of this administration. And it was very confusing. It turned out to be a bit of a brawl between the old timers and the new timers, or the revived timers. We had the former the former administrator of the EPA during the first Biden administration, and we had the woman from Heritage Foundation who essentially wrote the energy and environment part of Project 25, but we also had people from NRDC and sort of more establishment types of another time. So needless to say, they all got into it. What was most interesting was a representative of the Large Public Power Council, who really said, you know, how difficult it is in these times to make decisions to buy plant, to close plant, and plant that may last 75 years. But the shifting sands of requirements, of regulation, etc., are such that it's very hard to get going in any direction, for fear that 4 years later you'll be told to go in another direction. In a way, it was very disturbing because we heard the now very predictable demands for electricity, but we didn't hear how we would have a stable environment in which to procure it. And I think that's true of a lot of things. There's great uncertainty. Today, Elon Musk was on Capitol Hill with Republicans, basically explained to them what he was doing. And it came about, this meeting, because of pressure from the Republicans, the red staters, who need to know their constituents are asking them, why is this going to close? Why is that not going to happen? And Musk, apparently, it was, we only have reports of what happened in the meeting, but he ended up by handing his cell phone number to the members of Congress. He may rue that because it may be handed to a lot of other people. I suspect he'll be getting a new cell phone number tomorrow. Members of Congress are not known for their discretion or for keeping things close to their vests. I'm sure a few reporters will by now have Musk's cell phone number, and a lot of people who might want to call him will be endeavoring to do that. I don't quite know what they'll ask him when they get through, but it's a very chaotic time. People are unsure, uncertainty, which is not something you expect from a Republican administration. But there's massive uncertainty uncertainty about our relationships with Canada and Mexico, uncertainty about our relationship with Europe, uncertainty about the future of Ukraine, uncertainty about the future of tariffs, uncertainty about inflation. A very difficult time for business, and normally business does not expect an uncertain and difficult time when there's a Republican administration. So we shall have to see, but it's all a bit wobbly at the moment, I think.
Well, all those are valid, very valid concerns and points. And, I think that our guest today, Chuck Brooks, president of Brooks Consulting, could chime in as well. Brooks has been doing cybersecurity for a long time and emerging technologies and other things. And I understand he recently just got back from Dubai and where he was speaking. So Chuck, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And yeah, there's also in my area of the world, I did spend 10 years on the Hill working for the late Senator Alan Specter in my political life, but I've been mostly involved since then in the technology world. And there is an upheaval there too, and a great uncertainty. And it starts, I guess, with artificial intelligence, even though it's been around for a while. But the implications and the applications are still quite a flow. We don't know exactly how it's going to impact a lot of industries. It's creating havoc with the stock market too. There's a lot of algorithmic trading. Predictive analytics are now taking over a lot of the analysis. And a lot of the writing you see is generated by artificial intelligence. And also now you have a new thing, not really new, but really being developed, is agentic AI, which sends out agents to basically become experts in every kind of industry and application to counsel you. And combined with that, we have the quantum era approaching. We're already requiring quantum resistant cryptography, the algorithms to protect everything we do in the Department of Defense. But quantum is on the table now. It was thought to be 30, 40 years away. But at least for the enterprise big quantum, it may be a decade away, but there is quantum technologies already here, and that's photonic quantum computing, which is more stable with lights. Although every day we hear of a new breakthrough. We heard it from Google, from Microsoft, and now we hear that China has come out with a quantum capability with 123 qubits that has 1 million times more power than what Google had. So it's really a race. It's a quantum race. It's an artificial intelligence race. And it's primarily between the United States and China. And we're seeing those applications and investments going across every industry. And then combining with that, we have, of course, the security issue, because we built the internet without any security in mind. It's now become the backbone for everything we do, and commercially, communications-wise. It's changed the way we think, the way we get information. It's revolutionized our way of life. But the problem is it's also created a new arena for criminals, and a lot of the brick and mortar criminals have now moved to the cyber realm. And it's not just the criminals that are low level. You have organized hacker gangs, and you have state-sponsored gangs and governments promoting this, which should cause a huge amount of havoc. As we saw recently with the CrowdStrike, just a misconfiguration cost several $billion. And we had 190 million records stolen from United Healthcare change breach just from last year. So we're living in a new kind of world. As Llewellyn mentioned, the political sort of mirrors that, but we don't know what's ahead of us technologically either. And combine that now with the third pillar, which is space, where we're getting all our sensing and communications from, and satellites are coming up, very rapidly up there from the private sector and government. So our whole world is changing before us, and it is uncertainty, and it sort of is a chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say, Chuck, in that conference that you went to in Dubai and spoke, any highlights from that conference in terms of technology or best practices or any new policy or anything that is going on?
Well, there is a little bit. I mean, Europe has already come out with a strong statement on guidelines for artificial intelligence. The previous administration had a sort of a more vague application of how to deal with AI. But the reality is, there's no limitations. There's no standards out there, so everyone can do what they want to do, and everyone can say, well, it's going to destroy the world eventually. Yes, it may, but no one's really doing anything to reel it in. And industry looks at it as more of the revenue potential and opportunity. So I think the takeaways from Dubai is that I found is that we're much further ahead than most people think. There's a lot of investment going into this, billions and billions of dollars. There's a lot of smaller groups that have developed some pretty good language models and other things. And we're going to see an explosion of capabilities coming in the next 5 years. And it's definitely going to redirect things. It's going to affect employment. It's going to affect the careers. It's going to do all kinds of things. But right now, it's really more of an enabler to augment the human. But eventually, the misuse of it, it's easy to poison the data. That's another thing with cybersecurity, which is a problem. But so we're starting to have the discussions, and also it's a global thing. It's not just the United States. Europe is very advanced. The Middle East and also Asia, all are working on AI components and capabilities. So it is the wild, wild west. I'd term it, and I was impressed with Dubai because first of all, it has a very wide array of people involved, everyone pretty much, even Chinese and Russians, and the West. And so you see the give and take, and you see the capabilities that was on display, and the speaking and the worries. So I think eventually we're going to be all in this together, but not quite yet.
Yeah. Llewellyn?
Chuck, there are so many questions I have because everything you say, I've been working on this for a long time. Before ChatGPT sort of brought it all to our attention, but now it's going very fast indeed. We were expecting it to have big changes and said it's going to change the way we live, play, and work. Well, suddenly it is changing the way we live, play, and work. And as often is the case, the political class is behind, way behind the reality of what is happening with AI. I want to ask a specific question. Is the Pentagon sufficiently defended against state actors, and have recent decisions by this administration endangered the security of the Pentagon systems?
I think the Pentagon operates on a different level. They have their own internet, cybernet, and capabilities, most of which are clandestine and not disclosed. It can be debated. I haven't seen that the military has a strong role in this, and DoD is even though they cooperate with the civilian side and sectors, NSA and DoD are pretty glued when it comes to cybersecurity. They did announce that they were relinquishing some of the offensive, not capabilities, but some offensive things they were doing in cyber. I don't know if that impacts it more of a policy-wise, but capabilities. But having been around that world, I'm just every day I get a little bit more insights into the capabilities, and there's some amazing capabilities out there. The question is, how many have been leaked, and what are our adversaries doing? And I think one of the problems that we've done, and this is not just to this administration, is we've underestimated the Chinese in a big way. They've plotted along, basically stealing our IP, developing their own, and developing a huge amount of resources into these new technologies and capabilities. And they've already demonstrated quantum entanglement. They're stealing data left and right. Years back, they stole the OPM security clearances files and everything. So I think we're underestimating their determination and their capabilities. They place people all over in universities and think tanks, and it's just something we've sort of been blind to in a national security sense. And I think it's going to come back to haunt us if we don't recognize that. And we certainly cannot be isolationists in that case. There is no such thing as isolationists in this world anymore, in a digital world. And I'm worried about it. And you're right when you opened up with the political understanding of technology. It is dismal. It always has been. We had once the Office of Technology Assessment, but Congress got rid of it because they thought they knew everything they needed to know. And it's just, they're operating in a vacuum, and they react. We should be proactive, but we're reactive. But back to your original question, I'm hopeful that DoD and NSA are the programs that are mostly non-disclosed, and what they're working on that have the very technical capabilities are strong. You never know until they're audited and to what is let go and what programs are quelled. But it's really, I think, just too early to tell.
I was interested that we had abandoned our offensive posture against Russia, because generally in technology, offense and defense are closely linked, and the lessons of one apply on the other. Particularly, it is very difficult to say I can only be defensive. This is not a very strong situation in most cases. And what about shadow use of AI? We have an interesting situation in corporations in which the C-suite is hesitant. Should we buy this agent, or should we commission that company to write agent? Whereas down on the shop floor, everybody is using AI, whether the company has signed on to it or not. Every workstation has people using AI. So we're seeing something very interesting, which is like a groundswell of adoption. Therefore, there is a formal adoption. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like that before.
You're absolutely right, and a lot of that's generational. A lot of the younger workers, particularly, grew up on this stuff and are just love to have it with them. Companies, it's a huge cyber risk just for that too. I mean, there's a zero trust mandate in government, but also in much of the private sector, and that sort of negates any zero trust when you have those outside AI capabilities in your networks and on your devices. Some companies I've seen have adopted their own versions of AI and are encouraging the employees only to use that, rather than saying you can't do it. Here's something you can use, and usually it attaches some way to one of the large language models or an open AI or something, but it's just a different version. But it's difficult to really monitor that because first of all, they don't really have the personnel to do it. The only way to really monitor that is use AI yourself to see what anomalies may be in the network and what's attached. But it's a real problem. Again, zero trust is really the only way to mandate that. And in the private sector, a lot of companies are going to do just what they want to do. They want to spend the costs or invest in security generally. And again, another mention is the C-suite is, for the most part, been disconnected. Just like a lot of Congress, they don't have a real deep understanding of technology and the future of technology, and they're still operating in a world that is going to soon be obsolete. So I think it's imperative, for C-suites to really recognize the promises and drawbacks of AI, of quantum, of 5G, and the world coming ahead of us, and rather than sit there and just basically just be reactive. But that's a whole other story.
Let me share my screen real quick, Chuck, and I want to, cybersecurity challenges are many. When you look at this list, I mean, it's like daunting, right? And enterprises have, almost a unique configuration and hardware solution for a lot of these things. Quantum is not even on the list.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about, we're heading into a time where you have most people use cell phones to transact, to do everything. The economy is moving to the phone, not to the PC. Is there a big difference between the cybersecurity and the phone versus the PC? And are there any advantages or disadvantages of choosing one way or another as you expose yourself to the vulnerabilities?
Well, it really depends what kind of computer you have, how fortified you are with your software, and there really isn't too much difference. Phones are certainly being updated, particularly Apple recently with an update every couple weeks. But the exposure of them in the sharing of different, the basically cross-pollination of things they have on from work are creating problems, and most people are reckless with it. They have no sense of privacy, particularly the younger generation. So it's posing a big risk. And then also you want to, see up here that, the social engineering capabilities have gotten so much greater because of AI. You used to get these little things from some prince in Nigeria saying you won the lottery.
Right.
Now you get, stuff from your bank, from your boss, from your company,
Mhm.
from Amazon. It looks regular. And then to make it worse, they're automating these phishing attacks. They're sending out like 50 or 100. They're sending out tens of thousands at a time, and they only need a couple to make it, worthwhile.
Yeah.
The other problem is we can't, find them because they're hidden in some country where they don't want to be, they don't want to enforce it, and they get paid in cryptocurrency. So it's a real problem. I see Internet of Things. Gosh, that's everything's connected, right? And MIT demonstrated last year that they could get into a network by going through the refrigerator. So everything is basically an angle in to your network when it's
Yeah.
connected. Your phones, your doorbells, everything. When you're in this world. So it's less and less privacy, more and more risk.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I wonder about truth. You touched on it. We don't know how to differentiate between a phishing attack and a real communication, but privacy is one side, but the other is just the truth of things. We will have so much more difficulty going forward in establishing the veracity of anything. Is it real? And the fakes are so hugely convincing. Somebody, as an entertainment, made a fake of me giving a talk that I never gave, saying things I have never thought. In fact, exactly the reverse of what I think. And there were a few little slips in the pronunciations that I would use, but not much. If you didn't know really well, you couldn't tell the difference. And that was just somebody doing it casually to make a point. What are we going to do? Well, we don't know anymore about anything. And where we have lost truth, are we going to be able to watermark everything? And do watermarks really exist? And is there a science of watermarking? Is there research on watermarking? What do we do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the watermarking, yes, there is a science on it. It comes out of stenography. It's been used by intelligence services for decades. It's just now pretty sophisticated. They could put a little dot in a picture and to authenticate it to make sure it's the same one, not copied. There are some technologies out there, but the problem again is that not everyone has them. You'd have to purchase it. There are a lot of programs that look for anomalies in pictures that are deep fakes and stuff, or voice patterns because it can replicate your voice. One example of a horrific thing that happened is a bank I think it was in Singapore. They were doing a conference like this on video, and they deep faked a CEO in the voice and said that they needed to do a transaction to send $40 million to this account. And Treasurer was on there and did it, and it was a complete fake. That happened a couple of years ago, and there's the worst because there are people that are now using it for extortion, saying we've kidnapped your daughter or whatever, son, and now people don't really know. So the other thing is that this there's a conditioning to it too, because you're growing up on a basically an Instagram, TikTok world now, where people that are in their teens now, by the time they're 30, they're so used to believing everything they see on these TikToks, and actually, it used to be that you get the news from a few sources that were reliable or semi-reliable, but now they get their news, from anywhere and anything, and it doesn't have to be, what you consider real news. So again, yeah, the information world is very difficult. It's going to navigate, and how do you stop it all? I don't know. I mean, I think the watermark and stenography is a great thing, but you'd have to do it on a basically enterprise level, and make it as a requirement for like the Microsoft products, for Facebook, Meta, for Twitter, everything. And I don't know if you can actually legislate that, but it may come to that at some point.
Tell us about your company and your work.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my background is I do come out of government and the private sector. I spent, as I mentioned earlier, I spent 10 years on the Hill with Late General Inspector doing technology and security issues. This is, of course, early before the internet. And then I went to work as one of the first people at Department of Homeland Security. Was a plank holder and went to the Science and Technology Directorate. And later on went into careers at SRA, Xerox, and Homeland Security, and finished my career over at General Dynamics Mission Systems, where I was a technology cybersecurity scout. And since then, I've been pretty much teaching part-time at Georgetown for now 8 years. My company has been around for 20, but on the side. But now I'm doing it full time, and really what I'm doing now is besides my consulting, which is usually projects and strategies, and it could be from everything from marketing to anything technical, and a lot of cybersecurity work, like writing coursework and stuff for CMMC and stuff. But what I do a lot now, which I enjoy it, is I'm actually doing a lot of events and traveling around the world, speaking from places to like Kazakhstan, Dubai, Rome, Austin, Texas. So it's really enjoyable. And I just wrote a book, the one right on the right here, Inside Cyber, which really talks about we're talking about the impact on security and privacy from artificial intelligence, quantum, IoT, 5G, and other emerging technologies. So my work now is really me. It's I've freed up, and it's well, and probably a lot like you when you're really doing what you want to do. And and the hardest part for me is keeping up with everything, because the news and the technology are changing so fast, and seeing what trends are going to be, and where you should strategize where you want to be and how to operate. So I think that's the same with any business around the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chuck, when you think about, let's talk for a moment about privacy. It seems like Europe is so far ahead with GDPR versus us. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a simple reason. Our government systems are different. We have a lot of different lobby and interest groups that do a lot with marketing. They sell their products, whether it be insurance, whether it be cars, whatever, and they've been using the data we do when we go to websites and cultivating it and doing it for several years very successfully. So those lobbies don't want a GDPR, and we're a bigger, broader kind of free speech kind of country anyway. But there is some small, states are starting to look at it. Europe has a different, concern. They were looking really at in a different way at privacy, and GDPR is a great, I'm in favor of it. I think it's a really good thing, because I think, it has a cybersecurity aspect too, when you basically have to monitor where everything is, and put enforcement behind anything that happens when they misuse your identity. And I think really what we're talking about right now is what is risk is our identities. As Lon said, he's been deep faked. I've had my profiles, my social media faked and stolen and attacked, and pretty much our identities are in the future of who we are is at stake. So I think privacy, even though Vince Cerf, one of the founders of the internet, said it doesn't exist anymore, it does exist in some things. It doesn't mean that everything you do has to be on digital, and everything you everywhere you go and everything you want to give up information for social engineering. So I think I'd like to see more privacy come to the United States, but I just don't think it's in the cards. And Lon probably could speak more about that, but I think our system of lobbying and other things make it almost impossible.
So another thought was, when you think about where we are, you could argue that nothing can be 100% secure. So hence why everybody's moving into multi-factor authentication. So I log in, and then I get a token to log in again with my other device. My other device, is it you? Are you there? Is it you really? Are you really you? Are you really you? So isn't that really ultimately how it's all going to work out? Multi-factor authentication, so the system knows that it's me, it's not a robot or
well, it is one of the best ways to secure yourself. It's definitely beatable, though. AI can beat it, and they've already demonstrated they can beat it. But the fact is that if you make yourself less of a hanging fruit, and someone that just uses a weak password, has no multi-factor authentication, is going to be the one that's going to be corrupted first. But yes, using MFA, using biometrics or facial or thumbprint and token is definitely a deterrent for most hackers. They don't want to spend the time. And if you're going that low, then even maybe even add a VPN to it. But yeah, I mean, they're gonna want to go where it's easier. It's just the way that it is. And so I definitely recommend for all those. Cyber hygiene is still the best thing. You know, awareness of what you are. Don't click on something that looks you know, like too good to be true when it is, and it isn't.
Sure. I wonder if I could ask, is cyber capable of healing itself? What we have within the AI.
Come closer. Come closer.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Chuck. Is the internet capable of policing itself? Will we be able to have policing agents that will go out and identify? That's one question. The other question, how do you describe quantum to a layman?
Okay. Yes. Okay. That's the first question. It probably does have the ability with agentic AI to do some of the basic cybersecurity hygiene right now and future to recognize any abnormal behaviors out there that may be a threat. The problem is you know, who controls it and how much of the internet does it actually look at. You know, and then there's a thing called polymorphic malware where the bad guys can change the malware in process, knowing how your AI is going to react already. So it's going to get complicated in that sense. But AI right now is very good for looking at anomalies and recognizing some threats. And we have databases of known threats, and it certainly speeds up the process for threat intelligence and makes it much, much better. Again, it's not everyone has it though, but a lot of the big ones do. Big companies and big critical infrastructures definitely need to do that. Yeah, quantum is not easy to describe because it's really a different way than classical computing. We rely on digits of X's and ones, X's and O's. Quantum basically has a capability of doing several things at a time, millions of things at the same thing using basically physics. So whether it be a qubit, which they call, that really has that capability, or whether it be a photonic, they're using different kind of element. So it doesn't involve integers at all. And so it has the ability to compute everything all at once. So you're not limited to basically intersecting, you know, just a series of X's and O's. But that's a basic way of saying it. It's a lot more complicated, but also there's biological computing out right now that works similar ways with biology and chemical computing. So computing is a really sort of new area, which is going to evolve, and eventually we're going to see it, you know, probably as part of it. So it's going to the glasses next. The chips are already there in sort of an early way in Finland and other places, but you know, eventually computers are going to be part of us. So that's what's going to happen. In quantum, when it does arrive, that sort of the enterprise one that everyone's talking about, it'll have so much power. It'll be like you know, a million supercomputers at once. And it doesn't mean everyone's going to have it. It'll just mean that everything could connect to it. So you know, that's why Google and Microsoft and IBM and all the big ones are working to put so much money into it, and particularly why China is too, because they'll be able to decrypt everything that they've ever have that they can't decrypt. So you know, it's very difficult to sort of explain it, but quantum is just a different way of looking at computing.
Got it. Got it.
I know. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, no, it's very interesting. At the moment, there's something very democratic about AI. I can get on it and ask it questions, you can do it, everybody can do it. Is that going to remain? Or in order for the AI companies, the Googles, the Metas, etc., to make a profit on AI, are they going to have to charge so much that ordinary people won't be able to afford to access it? One of the challenges, seems to me, is there is no business model for the AI companies. They got big on advertising, but they're not going to get big on AI because there's no advertising involved. They essentially destroyed the publishing industry by sucking up all the advertising because it's cheaper and more efficient digitally than it is on paper or broadcast. But now we're facing this huge investment. About $1 trillion has been invested by these companies in AI without a business plan. Do you think the only possible way for them to recover their money is to charge so much for the service that only corporations will be able to afford AI?
Well, I think they're going to that model where they're having different levels, where you have the general user doesn't have the same large language model capability of in abilities that you have in the full AI that they develop. Right now, they're just sort of proving it and getting it out there and getting us addicted to it, which they're doing a good job of doing. But it could move in that end. But I mentioned earlier that agentic AI is an area that a lot of the investment's turning into right now, where people are actually creating these agents to go out and really be sort of experts to pull you in. I think there's a much more of a monetary structure for that kind of thing. If you say you want to go on a vacation or something, and you can subscribe to this, and they'll tell you everything about the hotel, the food, the service, how much you travel, your planes. When you specify it like that, then it becomes more of a service. So I think that's where it'll probably go. But I do think that there'd be some of these super AI capabilities that the big corporations will have, just like supercomputers. They want the best of everything, the ability to predictive analytics, and that would have a heavy price, I think. And but so it'll be a mix.
I have a question about the future of data centers. At the moment, we believe they're eating the electric world, that they use up to 25 times the amount of electricity for an inquiry as the old-fashioned search engine did. However, what will quantum computing do if that comes to AI, to data centers? Won't that so speed up everything that the demand for electricity will go down rather than up?
Yeah, it will. I think it'll optimize data centers. Again, it's probably that type of enterprise. Quantum computing's a few years off, but you hit a problem right now with the electricity. It's current with the data centers being built because we're producing so much data at a rate that they don't have the electricity to do it. So nuclear is making a comeback for that reason. Microsoft announced they're building a nuclear plant, and so I think that the nuclear industry that's been dormant for many years, probably in a different version, of course, because we have much better technology now, will make a comeback until something better comes along.
Another question about data centers. If they go from air cooling to water cooling, will that help? And secondly, what about photon cells? I know the Japanese are working very hard on a photo cell, which won't use much electricity because they'll be using light instead.
Yes.
And there won't be any excess heat.
A big trend, and there's some American companies working on that too. There's one called Quantum Computing Inc. and with the University of Arizona, I think, I'm not sure, is building photonic chips together. It's supposed to start next month. So I think that direction, certainly for energy efficiency and also capability, it's much more capable in analytics. And so I think that's going. And in regard to the water cooling, I've heard that it does make a difference in the percentage of energy being used, and it makes it more efficient. And I know there's been a movement of some companies to go that direction. So I think you'll see that too. I think you'll see a lot of the technologies that were started to being developed for green energy be maybe pushed towards data centers because there is an immediate application to maximize the capabilities, and it might be a mix of different technologies that make them really optimal and affordable.
I understand too that the data centers are getting smarter, that they're able to wheel their demands between various data centers rather than build a data center for a specific thing. A bit like electricity, they're able to share it around depending on the availability of electricity and other factors.
Yeah, no, that's true. Absolutely. The shared energy prospects, it's also done, with the grid too. It's split up in three parts, but that is a way that they can also maximize their efficiency and keep down costs. And that depends, it sort of ties into what's coming next with these smart cities too, where you're going to have the data centers as part of them. And you also need to have the energy to facilitate everything with the building security, everything else, communication. So that hasn't happened yet, but there's a lot of pilots going on with smart cities around the world. And I think that will be one of the outcomes with that.
Sure, sure. What is your thought on autonomous anything, vehicles, airplanes, what have you, and the challenge of that with cybersecurity?
First of all, they're very easily hackable. They've been demonstrated over and over. The car systems have been hacked. Pretty much everything is hackable anyway, but they usually have less defensive capability. They're usually smaller, just like Internet of Things. They don't have the what would be found in a computer, where you could bolster it and harden it and fortify the defensive capabilities against getting hacked. So that's a problem. Even airplanes can get hacked, and they've demonstrated that too. And satellites too. The Russians had hacked a Navasek satellite, the Ukraine, in the opening of the war. So I think all these are quite vulnerable for autonomous vehicles, but autonomous vehicles are still early. I mean, they're being used for delivery. Drones obviously are a different category because they're changing warfare, and they're also been readily available for a long time, cheap. But for cars and buses and stuff, it's still really an experimental. I've seen a few, and I know in California they have a lot of them. The issues I still think are, they can't go over long spaces of road. You'll need recharging for them. There's also some of the compliance issues and risks if something happens insurance wise. So I think we're in the early stages of basically autonomous vehicles. But right now, I think you always look to the military, how they use robotics and how they use drones, and you see that the viability of the technology is there, but it really is more of the environment that we have to operate in that is challenging.
Right.
Why would you want to hack an autonomous car? I mean, just out of malice? You just want to drive it into another car or push it over at the cliff? Or
there has been that. There's been bulldozers hacked against companies over cliffs. I think it was ABB a few years ago. So yeah, there's a lot of there are the hacktivists out there that like proving these things, and they do it. But it may just also be, if you were wanted to create havoc somehow, you would do it as a adversary state. That's a possibility too. Although I think there's much bigger targets. Critical infrastructure is pretty open. But you're right. I mean, most people wouldn't, but unfortunately, it only takes a couple. And then, of course, then you have hearings. You have, what happened, who was injured. Is it safe? So it's gonna, have to go through that first.
Yeah.
Chuck,
Go ahead.
Chuck, you mentioned that you teach at Georgetown. One of the things I've noticed in talking to professors about IoT and cybersecurity, the cyber future, AI, etc., is professors tend to be set in a position where what they know is what they know, and their classes reflect what they know or what they knew. It's very difficult for them to keep up. I can't keep up. You can't keep up. If you're teaching, are you teaching the latest to your students, or are you? I have one professor friend who I think is not teaching the latest to his student because I don't think he's kept up. And this is not a stupid man or an evil man, he's a very smart man. But this pace of change is so tremendous. His courses are reflecting maybe the status quo 3 years ago, which is very different.
Yes, absolutely. I wrote this course 7 years ago. I teach now called Disruptive Technologies and Organizational Management. I had to rewrite the whole course last year for that very reason. But the way I get around it, because everything is changing. So my in-class discussions, I assign the students to bring with them 3 newsworthy items of what happened that week in a certain technology area. It may correspond with their their module, but you cannot keep up without doing something like that, because it's every week there's some newsworthy thing, and everything's changing so fast. And also, I try to bring in experts that may be working in the field. That brought in a quantum person for my last semester that gave a really good insights into what is working in quantum, what isn't. And you have to always be open-minded. And I think that this kind of course, at least where I'm teaching in cybersecurity, there's sort of a mindset for that too, because cyber's always changing. I'm part of the cybersecurity program management anyway. But I think in more other classes, a lot of professors sort of get complacent basically with what they're doing. They have their curriculum, their courses, and they do the same thing over and over. I don't think you can do that anymore. Plus, students know they can get on the internet and they can find out a lot of things already, and they know everything about your course and about you before they even enter nowadays. So it's a different kind of world for academia. So I think you really have to be successful and keep the students interested and entertained is put a lot of time and effort into trying to keeping up.
The word emergence is used a lot. One use I've heard of it is a theory that the computer world has become so complex, so interdependent, that the code on which different things are based is long forgotten. Nobody knows who wrote it or where it is.
Yes.
That you could sometimes see a total disintegration of the IoT, because it's sort of this great structure has been built up, but the foundation may be sinking or may implode. What do you think of that? Do you think that there is a fragility to the whole computer technology based on what has been forgotten and which cannot be rediscovered?
There is, and there's always misconfigurations, because you may have a variety of different coders involved, and particularly in legacy systems. And that's a problem. There's now being AI developed to sort of recode, to be able to take the old Python or whatever it was used in before and update it into different code. So I think that's where it's going to have to go. But you're right. There's a lot out there already, and most of it's insecure because a lot of it's open source, and so you have a real problem there. So I think that goes back to the zero trust again too, because if you're really operating a business or if you're on a mission, you have to make sure everything that's being used in your network and your supply chain is clean, and that goes with the code, and that goes with your vendors in the network and etc. So it's a different world, and what you said is an existing problem right now, and a lot of the people are gone, that developed this stuff or moved on, and the problem, of course, with a lot of the people in the IT world, they do move on quickly. There's a dearth of them, and they're in demand. They jump from company to company, government now too, and so you're going to have those issues. So I think the only way to ameliorate it is with AI in that case.
So, Chuck, what's your favorite tool? ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok?
I haven't tried Grok yet. I like Microsoft Pilot too, and I think Gemini is really interesting. I'm still really an OpenAI guy because I've been using it more. But I try not to. I just use it more for advanced searches more than anything else, and keeping up to date on technology issues. But I see also now with you were talking about education earlier, that a lot of students are using it to write papers and to provide answers. But I think it's still recognizable when they're using AI. And but it's fun. It's a tool, just like every technology. It's a tool, and it's getting more advanced. And I think it's really important to be able to monitor which tools can do what, and which ones are most secure too, because, like I said earlier, it's easy to poison the well on data, and there's not many safeguards on that. Although they're building them in more than they used to.
Yeah. What's in front of you for the next 6 months, Chuck? More traveling, more conferences?
Yeah, more traveling. I do one every year in Rome, which is a great place to go. I know that's in June. It's a cybersecurity conference, global cybersecurity conference, and it's a lot of fun. It's a 2-day thing. I just booked Singapore for October for Tech Week, and I'm doing a Defense Acquisition University April 1st or April 2nd or something like that. April 2nd, actually, which is really talking about zero trust in government. So there's always a bunch that pop up. You have to pick and choose what you want to go to nowadays. And I went to some nice places before, and in Switzerland too, and other places. But it is, like you said earlier, it's a great way to see the world and enjoy it at the same time. But I'm trying to spend more time at home and be around the family.
Last question from me. When I went to Austin Energy in 2003, the bad actors trying to hack you were, early age programmers, teenagers, so on. They lived in sort of the traditional bad countries, Russia, China, North Korea, so on. Do you see that changing at all in terms of the bad guys versus the good guys, and how much of the the white hat versus the black hat, how is that battle going?
Well, I think it's still asymmetrical. I think the bad guys have an advantage. The rate's a little different. I think North Korea is basically living by extortion and ransomware. I mean, they're funding their economy on that. Just last week they had another major hack. So they're not going to change unless the leadership falls. Iran the same way. They're nefarious and they do bad things. Chinese are predictable. They're really methodical. Until no one's really. It's not just the United States that are going after everybody, including the Russians, by the way. So they just want to collect data, and they want to collect IP, and they want to cause havoc to test to see if they can, like our water resources and stuff. I look at Russia as more of the criminal element. There are a bunch of ransomware gangs that the government sponsors, but they make money. They pay their people, and ransomware is very targeted now, and it's very fruitful for them in terms of becoming rich. It's sort of like the oligarch model, but with criminals. So, it's a different thing. And unfortunately, they're pretty capable. They have some of the better hackers and stuff. So, until there's an Interpol, but until there's really any kind of enforcement, and it's very difficult to enforce. Basically arresting them in these countries because they don't care, unless it's something that may be, a blight on them. It may cause them issues. Certainly, no one in China, I don't think, is caring about how much is hacked or whatever like that. And so, I don't see it changing unless there's some sort of different, political outcomes that happen and agreements are made trilaterally among the superpowers to change it. But I'm not sure even places in Eastern Europe can even control it anyway. And we also said that, I mean, there's a dark web. The dark web is from all over the place, and some of the most ruthless bad people from all over the world operate on that, and then they share information and share hacking tools. So it's very difficult to penetrate. And so it's not just the big bad guys that we all know about, but it's the whole dark web too.
The dark web, can we shine light onto it? Can we somehow sanitize the dark web? Can the good guys win against the dark web?
Well, there's been intelligence agencies that have infiltrated it. It's very difficult. I mean, the dark web is everything from terrorism to drugs to child exploitation, which is probably one of the worst things on it. It's very prevalent. There are millions of horrible pedophiles on it globally, and they operate under fake names. Policing, law enforcement, and intelligence agencies have done a fairly good job of infiltrating and pretending to be one of these people and finding out who they are. They've also looked for discrepancies that these people, the names they use, may actually appear in an open internet. But it's very difficult because it's a Tor server, which is really difficult to hack unless someone knows. I haven't seen anyone. Maybe the intelligence services have found a way, but it's split up into so many different pieces to be able to get in. They've made it almost impossible. So, dark web is probably here to stay. Again, I think once You go after, they've broken up a few rings there. I think we need to really invest more into the law enforcement capabilities, and people are aware of what's happening, because a lot of the trafficking is happening on that.
Do you think, Chuck, that we need a larger government role? The government is very good at inventing things, probably less good at running them. Most of our inventions have come from the government, although people don't like to acknowledge it. Everything from fracking to the internet itself to GPS, our government invention, exploited and developed and brought to market by the private sector. But should we have a much larger government operation in computer sciences than we do?
I think we need public-private cooperation, investment in that. I think it needs to be together with industry, particularly in AI and cyber, where industry may have some leads on some things. But you're exactly right. I came out of a S&T and Science and Technology at DHS, and a lot of the stuff we're developed that are in use right now, particularly surveillance stuff, is developed out of there. So it has exponential value. And again, I think, you know, R&D is really the future of everything, particularly in a civilization now that is become so technological that we can't afford not to invest in and be part of it. And you know, in terms of national security, we certainly need those kind of investments. And I know a lot of them are not known and are classified, but we need more of that too. And I think if you look at the critical infrastructure in the United States, 85% of it's owned by the private sector. The government needs to be involved in protecting that too, because it's vital to the citizens, the energy, transportation, financial health, and it's being targeted by countries, not just hackers. So they're at a disadvantage already. So it's got to be at least the government jumping in, and that's why CISA was founded. And you know, I think there will be some element of that still. Yeah, you know, I'm an R&D kind of person, so I think the more the merrier. I mean, there's a lot of wasted stuff, but discovery is everything. And DARPA has done more for, I think, for DoD, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and creating things that were way out that are now real than any kind of a part of that agency. So I think, you know, you don't know what's out there until you research it and build it.
If you'd like to, as a last question, give us some happy prediction about where all this is taking us. Will our productivity go through the roof? Will we have cures to all our diseases? Will we live to be 150 years old? Where's it taking us?
Yeah, well, I think that you're right. The health industry has made you know, monumental gains in terms of being able to, you know, drug discovery, research drugs through AI and stuff. And new technologies, you know, new material science and stuff is really transforming medicine. And I think of all the places where technology is going to have the most impact, it's certainly in the health area. And you know, we're learning more and more about how our bodies work. We have genomics now with CRISPR, where we can remove bad genes. So you know, the future does look like we'll have a longer lifespan. Hopefully a healthier one too. But you know, I think, you know, of all the areas that touch it, healthcare applies to everybody, and everyone needs it.
Good job.
Chuck, thank you for being with us. It's always a pleasure. We'll keep in touch. Sorry that John Butler was not here today to serenade us at the opening and at the closing. But let us know your progress and your travels, and hopefully we'll see you at the next Digital 360 Summit in September, and
Great.
and somewhere around in the universe.
Yes, I definitely will be seeing you.
Chuck, I found this very, very informative, and I hope we can keep in touch, you and I.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mutual.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.